Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I would like to welcome you to another exciting panel as part of our summit as we go through and explore the gender data gap and the startup ecosystem. We have taken a look at it from already 13 different perspectives or 12 different perspectives up to now, and we're trying to create these aha moments and move them into actionable change. Before we get into anything further, I'd like to make a land statement of where I'm actually presenting from. I'm in Collingwood, and Collingwood resides within the territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas, the Nawash, unceded First Nation, and Saugeen First Nation, and is home to many Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. Welcome, ladies. I am so excited about this panel, and if I can get you to turn on your cameras, that would be wonderful. Today, we're actually going to be exploring the support network, the mentors and advisor. These are the people that you go to help bring focus into things, to help to guide you, to know that you're not on your own. The number one thing that I hear from female CEOs at that early stage is that they feel alone. So people like you are what we need to be able to support those CEOs as they kind of move to navigate through their through their process. Lori, I'd like to have you introduce yourself first. Welcome.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you for having me on the panel today. And I'm really excited to be here. I started Via Lucent to find the geniuses who are going to fix this planet and allow us to all keep living here and to help them stay in the awesome zone more consistently. I firmly believe that we have all the brain power we need to address climate change and all the resources we need to address climate change. And I both elevate the founders and I help connect the resources to get them to just fly. I am also an architect who has managed construction and worked in heavy manufacturing.
And I love that. I made a statement, I think about a year ago, that I was tired of being told what I couldn't do. So I got back to the business of being awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that, Cindy.
And Ravi, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, it is first, it's an honor to follow up after Lori here. So thank you, Lori, for that. Thank you, Cindy. So my name is Ravi Tour, and I'm out here in British Columbia, and I do similar work. In essence, I also help founders develop profitability with social impact and enhance their leadership, specifically around conscious leadership. The main goal here, as I was telling these ladies this morning, was simply because I have a deep need to not only protect my legacy and to be able to create a world that my son can thrive in and survive in at this point, but that we are at an existential crisis. And if we don't make some major turns and create innovation that leads to the betterment of our world, we're going to be running out of resources and opportunities. And I won't go a little too dark here, but period, right? And so I come up with coaching and consulting support for founders who are in the social impact space or would like to integrate a social impact element within their business model to be able to create those solutions we need so desperately today.
And I think that that's a very important place to start, is that we need this change. As much as we're fighting for equality and equity, the story needs to be starting about our planet as well. And I think that's a piece of the narrative that we want to bring into what we're talking today. I do want to talk about the difference between equality and equity. My daughter, I think it was about 2 years ago, brought me this picture, which was an amazing visualization. And she said, I finally understand the difference between equality and equity. And I, as a mom, said, "Of course you do," and said, "I can probably give you the definition as well." You know, that's where my mind went. But she showed me this visual, and I had the biggest epiphany, aha moment, that I realized I hadn't been thinking of things the right way. And it was these 3 equal boxes and a wall. And the man stood up on that equal box and he was able to see over. The woman stood up on that box and she was unable to see over, even though it was the equal same height. The person in the wheelchair couldn't even get up on that box. So we're not fighting for equality. This is not that is simply a metric. That is what we're going to be using to inform or to evaluate the change that we're enacting. What we need is to be recognized so that we can all fight on our own different way, or battle in our own different way, or affect change in our own different way with the skills that we uniquely have. So with that on, because we all have our own different origin stories, right? We are the superheroes that make change, the people that are part of that startup ecosystem. Lori, what is your origin story?
I can't let something that you said go just like that, because I really want to just pull into the light what you said about we're all here to do something. And all of us have something amazing to do. And part of my work, a deep part of my work, is helping people realize what that something is and making a positive reward cycle with them so that they do it bigger and better. And that actually is a huge part of my origin story. So I've been doing what I do for 30 years. It started when I was a teenager. At about the age of 13, we had moved to the country 2 years before. And at 13, I realized that my parents would fall asleep at like 10 o'clock and I would just leave the house. And nobody knew. I actually told them this about a year ago and they were like, you did what? I would just leave the house in the summertime. I grew up in rural Wisconsin. And I would go intentionally barefoot with no light and nothing. And I would walk through the orchard that we lived in and walk towards the bluff. And I just loved the feeling of the unknown, because anything was possible. And it was all kind of scary. And the more time I spent out there, they realized it wasn't even really that scary. It was just different. And by being out there and having so much quiet solace time, I had a chance to figure out who I was. And what I really loved doing was hanging around with the smart kids in my school and saying, there's this piece of possibility over here that I don't think you can see. Do you want that? Let's go get that. And so it started like in the band section in sixth grade band. But I've been doing this my whole life. And I turned this into a business a couple of years ago when I stood up from being an owner's representative. And I said, I'm not doing enough about climate. And I spent a year with a coach, and he helped me see what I saw in that orchard as a kid. I'm really brave in the unknown. I love the unknown. I'm a very confident guide there. And I have an affinity for hanging out with these geniuses and helping them stay in the awesome zone. It seems very obvious to me that here's this piece of possibility that you can't quite see. Would you like that? And so it was solidified with him kind of like letting me believe that I could do this for a living, that I started my company Vialucent, and here I am.
I love that visual. I have this picture of this apple even, or this food that's being offered out, and it's so tangible, right? That piece of awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ravi, your origin story.
Well, I think you really opened this up beautifully, because it really does come back to what you are an expert on. And I, again, like Lori, it's built right into my system and my process. So I have a process called Revolutionize. And through that process, you, first of all, identify the themes that reoccur in your life to give you the opportunity to understand what your specific expertise is, right? And then taking in other components, but not to distill the fact that expertise is really important. The more you start to pay attention, the more you realize where your journey is going, and you start to enter those unknowns. And so mine is very similar. It started very young. I'm a farmer's daughter, and I would be protesting on my own father's farm, right, up and down the driveway, or I was part of debate classes, or, fill in the blank. And what I realized was I wanted to really create impact and change for the world. I didn't really know what that looked like, but I knew, being an immigrant's daughter, a part of a small rural town, that things were a lot more difficult for people that looked like me, that were not only women, but also people of color. And so what I ended up doing was taking a bunch of different avenues. And I think I was actually listening to one of your panelists yesterday from the IP session, who was talking about, in a Punjabi family, which I am Punjabi, you are either a doctor or a lawyer is satisfiable, right? You can be satisfied with a lawyer. And I was going to be a corporate lawyer. And then I realized, no, I don't want to do that. I want to work with marginalized folks, and specifically women and youth. And that was that was groundbreaking for my family, in not the most positive way. but I pursued it. And so I stayed mostly in nonprofit for a very long time until I realized that I couldn't create change at the grassroots level that I needed to create, right? The need for change was moving exponentially, and I needed to do something different. So I moved into corporate finance that helped pay the bills, but was completely against my value system. And I realized then that there was a problem. And as I would get on a SkyTrain to get to work, every morning I would feel the pang of something more needs to be done in your life. You need to do more. And it was a couple of things that led me to where I am today. In 2016, I started to notice a change in a market shift. So I started to notice, Gen X investors, really diverting their money from traditional investments into socially responsible investments. And I thought, this is something. I mean, at the time, and it's so funny, I just created a social media post today about it. At the time, I was told by the people that were in the higher level seats that, it was just a trend and a phase. And here I am representing those particular businesses today because there's such a vast market. And so there was that. And then some world events that I could no longer stand idle and watch, right? I realized that if I didn't do something, then it's my own issue and my own fault, and I needed to do something. And so I took the jump, and here I am 5 years later, 6 years later, in business for myself, helping impact makers create impact. And so, that's the origin story in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, and very empowering as well. And I wanted to just kind of set the playground a little bit. So throughout COVID, we watched investment in female-founded businesses drop from 4% in some countries and 3% in some countries down to 2%. That's a big deal. By design, we are not included in medical research, in product design, as an example, with the audio equipment that we're communicating on right now, our voices are not captured properly, to the point that we come across as, and catch me if you've heard this before, our voices are coming across as shrill or whiny. That is not a nature of our voices, it's a nature of the mechanism that's capturing it. To the point where we have female leaders that actually go through speech therapy to lower their voices and slow down the cadence of their voices, including Margaret Thatcher and Hillary Clinton, which we still heard the shrill and whiny from, right? Cardio health. Big aha moment here. I'm a member of the Canadian Ski Patrol. I've been training first aid, practicing for 25 years. I taught for a number of those years. We teach the universal signs and symptoms of a heart attack to be that crushing sensation in the chest and the radiation of pain up and down the left arm. That doesn't apply to women. So we have one of our panelists from this morning who's developed a cardio health platform specifically for women of color. Because not only does sex play a part in your cardio health but race does as well. And it's time that we need to start taking a look at that from our lens. So with these in place, and the most important thing, and this will become an actionable thing, I think, later on, is that when we as founders are in front of investors, we're asked preventative questions. This market is so saturated. There's way too much noise. There's no chance you're going to succeed. You're going to fail. There's this company that's doing it better. There's this company that's doing it better. There's this company that's doing better. How are you going to compete? Wow, what a wall to put up in front of somebody. But by actually building up your toolbox, you're then going to be able to counteract that with a promotional response that elicits either a yes or a no. Are you asking me about my go-to-market strategy? Such a simple response. Their answer can be yes or no. If they answer no, they're not the right person because they don't get your market to begin with. If they answer yes, you've just changed the narrative, which is great on the investment playground, but let's put that same analogy out to everything we do. With that playground that we've just set now, When is the first time that you had to consider gender as part of a business decision? Lori.
First of all, I have to know how women feel heart attacks. I can't answer your question until you tell me.
The research hasn't been fully done yet.
It's
So
just, it won't necessarily be a crushing pain in my chest and pain radiating up and down my left.
it will
Thank you.
not.
Noted. I will file that to find out later. Thank you. The first time I had to consider gender in a business decision, I was actually, this was in the late 90s. I ran a house painting crew when I was in undergraduate college. And I kind of stumbled into being the person who could run it. I kind of like walked into the right room at the right time. I wasn't looking for it. And I realized it was something I could absolutely do. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd never run a business. I grew up in a family business. I saw my dad and my uncle and my aunt and my mom running an auto repair business as a kid. But I was like, I can do that. I can sell projects and hire people and get houses painted all summer long. And it was when I went to hire my employees was the first time that I realized that there was a gender-based decision to be made. That the men who I hired and the women who I hired brought fundamentally very different things to the crew. And I had enough employees for 2 crews, and I could mix and match them however I wanted to. And so I kind of played with it to see what would happen. And I found that when I had a crew that was all men, things went this way. And when I had a crew that was all women, things went this way. And when I mixed and matched them, it went better because there was a little bit of an echo chamber that happened when they were separated. For example, when it was all women on that crew that day, I noticed that they talked a lot about where to put the ladder.
Interesting. Where
was the best placement for the ladder? Whereas when it was all men on the house, one of them just grabbed the ladder and threw it up, whether it was right or wrong. And so, and the different decisions have different outcomes, right? So that was the first time it kind of came into my mind as a small business owner of like, building your team really makes a huge difference. And noticing what people's strengths are, regardless of gender, is really important too. Because there was all a blend of that, do you put the ladder up or do you talk about putting the ladder up? And it opened my eyes, I think, to future decisions that I made about team building throughout my career.
Very interesting. And Ravi, from your perspective, when was the first time you had to consider gender in a business decision you made?
Yeah. So I love the example you gave, Lori, about team. Mine has to do with when I think about it, just to offer some diversity here. I really think the first time I really had to challenge that or be presented with that challenge was when I was considering the business model. So in all of my time, I had been a counselor or an educator, a facilitator, an executive assistant was kind of the final phase before I started business. And one of the big things online back when I first started was just become a virtual assistant. And I thought, well, I could do executive assistants, but I knew I did a lot more than that. And one of the things early on, as I was learning about what I was going to truly do, I realized that, workflows were super important to me for many reasons, but for organizations to really sustain, they really need to understand how their processes work. And so to develop those out was really important. And then to automate as many processes as possible. And so as you can imagine, that area, if you will, of processes, automation, development, that is a really male-dominated area. And all of the well-meaning supports around me, almost all of them, tried to talk me out of that direction and said, you'll make more money just doing the assistance part of things. And I was like, well, that's good, but that's not where I'm headed. This is not the end goal. I'm here to grow, to really get towards the calling I'm meant to do. So I'll bide my time with this as I grow and learn. And I know that folks told me it was a poor decision, or maybe one that would really create challenges for me, but it was one that really helped me grow. And so when I was countered over and over through my growth journey about making different decisions, business decisions based on my gender. So, if you will, concede to something of this nature versus trying something of this nature, because that's not really part of your gender demographic, if you will. What I realized is every time I challenged the status quo and what it meant to be a woman or what it meant to do something as a male or a woman, the more I grew and the further I went and the more kind of jaws dropped. And it also gave folks an opportunity to challenge what they were being presented with in terms of their gender and their identity and so forth. So I would say when I first started, a lot of folks were saying, be the executive assistant online. And I said, no, I think I'll go this way.
And I think that's so important. I know for myself, when we kind of see the gender playing a role at different aspects of our life as well. And to that point, our view of what that lens looks like is very, very different. And I want to unpack that a little bit and find out from your perspective with the lens that we have. And this is one of the things that Edith Lovato had actually given, and I've been doing it a lot over the last day now, and it's made a big difference in how I view things. And it's about taking your beliefs and moving them into assumptions, so that they're no longer so close to you and so emotional. And if you move them out into assumptions, it gives you a way to look at it all from a very different view. And that's part of that lens. So we have that lens. Our lens is unique to us as much as we'd like to say it's shared by everybody. How do we create this larger lens that encompasses a lot more? And what are we missing then? And Lori, what are we missing from your perspective to create this bigger lens?
I love how you frame that. And actually, Ravi, I want to build on something that you said, because what I heard you say just now is that you had an inner knowing of how you wanted to do things, even though the voices around you were like, don't know. You felt what you knew was right, what you knew was going to be effective and impactful. You felt it, you knew it, you pursued it. And then all of a sudden you were successful at it. And you were like, of course I was going to be successful at it. Right. And I think to your question, Cindy, how do we take what we know? We all have things that we know to be true. At 13, I knew that I just had to wait for my parents to fall asleep, and then I could have an amazing outdoor adventure that nobody knew about. How do we take what we know and expand it out so that it becomes something that's known for a community? Because I think a lot of what we don't check is, and again, Cindy, to your point at the beginning, how medicine was designed, how education was designed, how this microphone was designed, how all of this was designed, didn't necessarily ask me what my inner knowing was. And once we realize that we can feel the glow of that and make it so in the world, in my life, that's how I have found incredible satisfaction in what I do. I officially started doing this job 2 years ago, but I've known how to do it for 30 years. I just didn't take the step to say, I'm going to show everybody else what this is. So I might ask you back, how many seeds and where do we need to plant them and cultivate them so that everybody knows that that thing that they know inside and out, and that's true to who they are, actually can be a reality in the world?
And I think that's very, very strong. You talk about your childhood and being able to persevere. I have something that I'd like to add into the lens to be able to give you a different perspective as well. When I was 3, maybe 4, I flew. I was quite proficient at flying. I remember the sensation of the feeling of the wind in my hands and the wind in my hair. Now I left that image and that sensory component in my childhood. And then when I was 25, I stuck my hand out the window and I felt that sensation again. And that memory was triggered and I went, oh, I didn't actually fly. So you see that lens really needs to kind of incorporate other things. So in terms of race, in terms of geographic location, in terms of culture, what part can we add to that lens to make it more visual? Because right now, the biggest thing that we can do as influencers is change how startups start, right? So are you designing your service and product with other people in mind? Or is it universally designed just for men of a certain stereotype? Because the whole purpose of all of this isn't really to exclude men, and it most certainly isn't to leave the conversations of diversity off the table either. What in that stream, then, in that vein, what part of that lens are we not picking up on that needs to be added in there for us to see a little bit better? And I'm going to bring that back to you, Lori, to just add that one extra little piece of the lens.
I believe the core piece of this, the first domino that knocks all of the other dominoes down, is the confidence, assurance, and knowing that that thing that you already know is true, it's also true for a lot of other people. And to go back to Ravi, what people told you about your processes, you knew it was right. And even in the face of everybody telling you it was wrong, you knew it was right. And so many of us have that notion. I know what feels right for me, and there are so many of me's who have been told that this isn't accessible. So when you start with that first domino of knowing that what you know will touch other people, will be of value to other people, it changes how you talk about your startup idea. It changes how you get that pre-seed funding. It changes who your pre-seed funder is. When you can clearly articulate why you know what you know and why it matters to the people around you, no matter who you are or what your idea is, that's when you open the door to get funding. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that we need a whole new cast of investors. I mean, that's not really feasible anyway. Yeah. We need to start within ourselves and show up to the conversation about investing, both, mentally, emotionally, and financially, knowing that what we have is valuable so that you can translate that.
Indeed. Build out that skill set toolbox.
Yes.
And Ravi, from your perspective, what is the piece of the lens that we're missing?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with, I feel like a parrot at this point. So I keep repeating myself, but nevertheless, I do feel like, a piece of the lens I think we're really missing is understanding constructs as they are set up today. So really understanding who you are, and then what your voice is saying from within is very necessary today for so many reasons, but also very necessary at the startup phase, because let's get real. Entrepreneurs, businesses are in the business of creating solutions. And typically you need to come from a place of innovation that allows you to create the solution. Therefore, you need to be clear, you need to hear, and what you offer as a solution is it can vary from other companies, right? And especially as you were saying, if there's already a pre-existing company out there, let's call them ABC company, and they're doing it really well, that's great. They are not the only solution, right? And they don't capture the entire market. You can be another voice. In fact, it has been proven over and over again that a market can have multiple vendors that offer solutions, right, if you will. And so it comes back to hearing your voice. That's why I agree so much with Lori in really eliminating constructs. So the man, woman identity, it's all really a construct. If we were to get very real about it, it is all really a construct. And I believe when we start to dismantle the constructs that have been established for us and around us, and we start to identify what is truly representative of us, for us, and for around us, we can then begin to become more objective about what we are seeing and what we are hearing, and then therefore what we are projecting out there, right? What we are then encapsulating in terms of our voice, our efforts, our impact, and so forth. The other thing that I think is super important is understanding that there is, I always say it's a double-edged sword, but everything has two, right? So when we talk about masculinity and femininity, well, every human being has a component of masculinity and femininity to them. So there really isn't a man and a woman other than anatomy, right? And obviously other components, but really masculinity and femininity both apply to every single human being. So when I was asked at the onset, who's your ideal client? Because that's one of the main things you will work on for the journey of your business. As you evolve, your client will evolve. And I said, I really like to work with strong women. I work really well with men, but I would like to work with strong women. And my coach was like, oh, so you like masculine energy? Yes, that's it, actually, right? So being willing to not only challenge the constructs around you to open up your lens and allow for growth, but then to be challenged by mentors, advisors, and folks around you who can allow you to level up and grow and open up your perspective. Because again, it is about really understanding who you are, what your voice is, and allowing that to be your compass and guide to the way you look at the world and what you take in. And it's got to be said that it will evolve. You are ever evolving. So it's super important to understand where you are today is only going to get much better no matter what the circumstance, because as Laurie was saying, yes, I knew that my processes, I had to do that. Did I know that in 2022, I was going to be, working with impact businesses, working with founders of all various stages, everything from, back then I thought I'd only be working with folks who are making 80,000 a year. And now I'm working with multi-million-dollar businesses. Never in a million years at that time did I think it, but I knew inherently that I had to take specific steps. And so again, you may not understand it, but listen for it, right? And that will help you evolve the perspective you're looking through.
Cindy, may I derail with a follow-up question for Ravi?
Yes, please
Thank
do.
you. Thank you. Ravi, I love the way that you frame construct and belief, and that touched on so many things in my memory. Can you talk about when you realized that you can change the construct? Because I think for people listening, that is the first threshold to clear. There is no spoon. It is a construct. And with intent and focus, you can change it.
Well, this is such a fantastic conversation. Okay, so let's talk about not expecting to be somewhere, right? So I had a construct today, Friday. On Fridays, I clean my office, I do certain things. I typically don't even get dressed on Fridays, no batch recording. And here I am, a great opportunity that I did not expect, and it just came to me. And so I tested the construct of what I had identified as Friday, right? And I tested the construct of just what my routine looks like, and there's opportunity. Now, to go to your question, why this is important is because I didn't actually know that I was challenging or seeing constructs for a very long time. Okay. And I would say, again, following that voice, I started to recognize patterns. I'm a big, firm believer in themes and patterns. It's truly the basis for everything I do. It doesn't matter what type of entrepreneur you are. It doesn't matter who you are, actually. In fact, it does not matter. If I can distill your themes, I can tell you where you're going, what's been going on for you, and how to kind of achieve the next step. So I would say that constructs, I began to discover them when I was super young. So I would say probably grade school. I had a lot of traumatic events happen, and then in my childhood, and it was tough. And then I got to grade 7, and I realized, being told by a teacher, this is your lane, your second best, right? In different words, of course, but this is the construct conversation. And this individual, the man, the white man, or boy, if you will, at the time, he's going to be in first place. And so you just need to get comfortable here, and he'll be comfortable here. And, I took that on, aside from all the trauma I experienced that I did, plus seeing how my family was living and so forth. And then as I continued to go and go and go, I realized, a lot of this doesn't make any sense. The systems, healthcare, education, innovation, you name it, they're meant to support us, but they're not. I am seeing problems worldwide, right? So this would have been in the 90s, late 90s, right? And then early 2000s, as I continued to press forward, it was really funny because not haha funny, but more like this is quite tragic. As I was in the nonprofit world, I was good to be able to be facilitating at a certain level or even being a volunteer. But when I wanted to go for that higher level, even the nonprofit world was telling me, wow, I don't think you're quite the fit. And I'm thinking, wait, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? And so as I pursued, I just kept watching the systems not work for people. And it started to really test. And it was 2016 where I really became firm in this understanding of what I was hearing, but not really understanding of these constructs were meant to support us. Yes, some people call me the construct version of crazy for thinking these things, but again, it's a construct. So am I innovative? Am I futuristic? Can I see things beyond what I'm being told? And I think we all can. That's why I resonate with everything you're saying, Lori, because I think we all can. And so a big part of that journey led me to realize constructionism is all around us. It is meant to hold us in place, considered as order. And I realized quite quickly that I had to challenge that. And I took the opportunities that were given to me, stages, clients, opportunities of various sorts to really challenge constructs as I started to get bolder and better. But I would say young, grade 7, and then late 90s, and then for sure 2016 was the aha moment of they're all around everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, as you can tell, this is what I'm most passionate about, is breaking down the barriers. And it starts with what we have been told to believe and understand that is true for us. And I'm here to tell you, and as you can see, all the folks here on this panel today, we're here to tell you the barriers are perceived barriers and obstacles, and your lane is not truly represented for you. I mean, lane is really, what is a lane? But it's not represented for you until you decide. If you decide you want to go a direction, if you decide this is where you want to go, this is what you hear, this is what you feel, I would encourage you to pursue that. Even the small little thoughts that you feel like have no connection or connectivity to them, pursue it, because you are a lot more aware of your precise process and direction than you give yourself credit for. And the system around you will tell you otherwise for various reasons. I won't get into all of it today, but for various reasons.
And I do want to kind of run down this a little bit. So my area of study coming into this, prior to this, my last, I guess, educational bout was based on followership and first followership. And it was through one of the panels that we uncovered the whole idea of a courageous influencer, a courageous person on the side. And I'm going to reach out to this book again. Probably should have had it on the top. So first followership is something that I'm obsessed with, especially within the startup ecosystem, because we are on this panel all followers or first followers of an idea of a founder that we're supporting, of an early stage investor. They're the first follower monetarily of a company. That co-founder, that is the first follower of somebody else. So when we talk about a courageous follower, when she refers to it in her book, Barbara Kellerman, she talks about a courageous bystander in terms of bullying, right? So you have these constructs that bully is bullying. If we stand around as bystanders, we are a part of that problem. But if we stand up courageously, we don't have to be that leader. We don't have to be that hero, but we can stand up and say, this is something different. And I want to bring this idea because I want to start moving into the next part of this, which will be actionable change. My daughter, was on the Young Entrepreneurs panel. And one of the things that she brought up was that the stereotypes, it was such a struggle to try to break through the stereotypes in school, that you have to wear pink, that you can't have a boy as a best friend, that you've got all of these constraints on you, that it's so tough to be able to break through them, and to be that courageous person that can stand up and say, I'm confident in who I am, will give that person, another person, a mirror to be able to say, if they can do it, I can do it. And this should be done at all stages. As women, we have a little bit of a harder process because we're left out of history altogether. So we don't see ourselves in the books that we're being educated from. From that point, and I find so much value in the conversations that's been having so far. But what should actionable? What does actionable change look like? We'll take that from a high level. But what is actionable change? What will you be doing when you leave this panel to go, I'm going to take one more step back. Has this conversation helped to galvanize your idea of the gender data gap? Or are we just getting started? Let's start there first, and then we'll get into the actual change next. Lori, has it galvanized you?
I'm going to have a very frustrating answer for you, Cindy. Yes and no. So does the gender data gap exist? 100%, completely. Data doesn't lie. It's there. Back to your idea of constructs, Ravi, it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't.
I'm going to speed this one up as well. I'm going to agree with Lori. That's exactly my stance, right? Mm-hmm. Yes and no. Mm-hmm. Yes, gender, there are gaps. They exist. None of us are under a facade. However, they're due to constructs. And so the more we start to question and identify the constructs as constructs, and then start to identify what's valuable for us, we get further away from gender equality, inclusion.
We do want to leave equality out there, and because we want to, and it's not. I want to move the question away, or the action away from the talk of equality altogether, and take a look at it from the terms of equity by design. So more women die in car accidents because cars are not built for them. They're designed for men and shorter men. Even the seat belts don't fit us properly. So by design, rather than, true construct at a very tangible level, we are left out of society. The society, universal society, is built for men, including right down to the medical side of things. There's even COVID research, the vaccine. Women are left out of that research. When they do research for new medical procedures, even if it's cancer, breast cancer, majority of the studies were done on men. All of these components that we're not thinking of. How do we change? What is the actionable change that we can do? And I'll give you an example of what I'm doing. So leaving this, that I've developed a valuation methodology that valuates early stage technology startups, but we build and value gender influence into how much we price out the company for at an early stage. The other thing from this panel that we're doing with some of the other panelists is we've set up a room that we're going to help to ideate. So you bring your product or your service or your company within this Zoom room, and then we start to talk about how that can be gender informed, because everybody is part of the narrative and we're all part of the solution. But what does that action look like? Leaving this panel, what can we do? How do we put what we're talking about, our words, into actually action? This is what we're doing. May 3rd, by the way, is when that panel comes in. The I forget what it's called, but the breakout room, that's what it's called. Breakout room starts on May 3rd at 5 p.m. What does the actionable change look like for you? What can you leave this panel and start action?
So for me, the action that I take in my work life is I'm really very intentional about who I take on as a client. And it's really important for me to have a balance of types of people in my client load at any given time. And the action I'm directly taking with them, I frankly, Cindy, I do this with men and women, everybody, is you are an exceptional human. The guardrails that people have told you that exist do not exist. The mountains that you have put in your way because people have told you they're in your way, do not exist. So are there real data-driven challenges out there about like how the market was designed and how products are designed and how we generally understand what things are? Yes, there are. And listen to that piece inside of you that's telling you that this is the better way. This is for the segment of the market that's been left out. You know it because you are it. So let them know. It's really for me in my work and where I help people is in believing this thing true to the core of who you are, so that every time you speak, it becomes an automatic habit to speak from this place of, yes, people have been left out of this. Yes, that's wrong. Yes, there is a world of opportunity. There is a blue ocean of opportunity here in all of the people that have been left out. And I know about it because I'm an expert in it. And to have the confidence to say that all of these things that people have told you that you can't be, they're not real.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, it is through the work that I do, but I think it really comes down to leadership, right? So we are informed of the gaps, right? We are informed with the data of what has been happening and where we need to be taking change and impact. And so, innovation comes from us, the individual. Innovation can't be tapped into, and we can't create solutions for what is not working or what this data is telling us if we don't enact leadership. And very specifically, I champion conscious leadership, right? So we have to become very self-aware to begin. Like, you have to be very self-aware to understand who you are and what your voice is saying, what your values are. And then begin to start becoming authentic and staying true to who you are. Then with integrity, you can start to stand up as Cindy is, as Lori is, as I am, and saying, in every arena that we play, so whatever our sandbox, we stand up for what we believe in, our values, our beliefs. This is important to us. The data tells us this, and we know that this is what it means for me or for you or whatever it may be. And then it's about understanding your responsibility. And at this point, I believe it's paramount that everybody understands that we all individually have responsibility to ourselves, to the folks around us, and to the world. And that's why I speak a lot about legacy. And then from there, you need to be in that growth mindset. So again, challenging what, as Lori was saying, challenging all those barriers and obstacles that have been put forward through your conditioning throughout your life, challenging those and understanding that you, through scale development, through simple execution, moving forward, you can do it. Listen, so much of my life, I've been told I couldn't do it. I wasn't meant to do anything other than A, B, C, and D. And let me tell you, I've blown all of those out of the water and continued to do things that even I surprise myself with daily. I'm like, wow, how did that happen? Oh, because I took the chance, I did the do, and I kept moving forward. And then it's about emotional intelligence, right? It is really understanding who you are, understanding emotions from the other person's perspective. It makes you a better leader no matter what seat you're in, whether you're the director level, the bottom level, I use that very loosely, or the top level. It doesn't matter. Once you start to understand all of those components and you start to become an emotionally intelligent leader, well, then the innovation becomes natural, right? And that's the final piece to conscious leadership. So I champion conscious leadership in all the work I do. I don't, I work with masculine energy, but quite frankly, I work with folks that are going to be an ideal fit to doing the work. If you are not ready for the work, it's not your time right now, and I'll say no, but I work with the folks who are ready to do the work because it's their time, and I need to support them in moving forward so that they can produce the innovation so they can spark the next person. So, for me, it's using all of my platforms, understanding my obligation, responsibility, my authority, and my privilege, if you will, and utilizing that in the most impactful fashion possible.
I like that, and it inspired me to kind of show up this sign here. Underestimate me. That'll be fun. And I think that that we can all kind of live that way too, right? Just to both of you have echoed very similar stories and very similar inspirational lines of thought. And I think that that's very powerful. In order to have actionable change, so we need to have some level of metrics. What will the metrics look like to drive the change that you're talking about?
As you can see by my gestures, Cindy, I don't work in metrics. I love that you want the data of this. I have a very data prone mind from my life as being an architect.
Exactly.
And in this work that I'm doing now, it's so much more about believing in that piece of you that knows where you're going. So in the sense of the metrics, do you know you're growing a $15 billion company?
Yes, you should.
Then make the plan.
Yeah.
Make the audacious plan. When are you going to have a $15 billion company 10 years from now? Cool. What do you need to do in 5 years? What do you need to do in 3? How about 1? How about in the next quarter? How about this week? Pick a number, hit it. And for me, Cindy, I can't give you the numbers. I honestly, from where I sit and from where I support startup founders, I don't care what the number is. It's totally irrelevant to me. But the number, in a way, for the founder is that carrot that helps them. And Ravi, I love what you said. You're not ready for the work. That helps them be ready for the work. That helps them step into the next level of ready for the work. Because I bet you take on people when they're ready for you. And by the time they're done with you, they're ready for the next one. Because it's like a set of plateaus, right? So let that number, figure out the number. You own your business. You know what the number is. Just sit down and do the math and break it down to this week. And everybody in your company gets a number. You know what? You're going to have a dashboard that you can look at the numbers and you can see what's not working. Because if you can do it this week, you can do it this quarter, you can do it this year, you can do it in 3, 5, 10, bam, you're at a $15 billion company. And hold up Cindy's sign.
Let's put that up again.
Anybody can figure out how to hit a number in a week and a quarter.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I am a metric.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you have the right anchor and the right idea, then you're able to pivot around it to drive those numbers. Absolutely. And Ravi, from your perspective, what are some of the metrics that you'll be able to apply to your actionable change?
Yeah, so I'm a metrics nerd, let me tell you. I love me some data, I love me some numbers, and I love mapping it all out. I think my line for the year last year was map it out, right? Just map it out. So it really is that simple. When we talk about metrics, it can get a little overwhelming. I mean, metrics, what? But not really, especially if you're at the startup stage, it can seem very overwhelming. And I'm here to tell you that metrics are not overwhelming. They're very simple. Number one, objective. What is it that you want to accomplish, right? What's the big goal? For me, when you're driving impact objectives, it's very important to understand a few things, and this is all built in Revolutionize, but that you have to understand who you are. So I call it, it's a proprietary tool, but I call it a warrior assessment, right? Everybody is a type of warrior when we're trying to achieve impact at this point, in my perspective. And so we really need to understand what your values are, what your tendencies are, and how that needs to be then understood for application towards your goals. Because if you're going to do goals in somebody else's methodology, it's not going to work. You're never going to hit those numbers. You're going to feel frustrated and you're going to go backwards. I can guarantee you that from the experience that I've had, right? The next thing is, when you are thinking about your impact, you really have to understand at this point, what type of impact are you trying to create? And so I typically use the UN, the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals, right? So the SDGs, simply because they're good markers to give me a category that I can then work on, if you will, right? I also really like to understand industry. So take, for example, whatever industry you're in, what are the big risks, right? So doing a very simple SWOT analysis can help on the industry itself, but what are the big risks? What are the threats? What are the opportunities? Where can you innovate? And how can you, your person, specifically fit in that area of change? And then it's about mapping out, driving. I mean, there's a few other steps, but really the end goal is to map it out. List out the objective, map out those key performance indicators and results, right? What is it that you need to do to hit this goal and target, and what will you see as a result of it? And then understand who is going to help you along the way. Do you need a team? Do you need seed money? Do you need support, advisors, mentors, coaches, strategists, right? Who is going to fill the void of what, because listen, you're a genius, but you cannot do it all. I promise you that too. So where can you get the support that you can? And if you can't get it immediately, map that out too. Build it into your plan. It's all about gaining clarity, understanding the true objective of your impact, whatever that looks like. And this applies to business and life in general, and then mapping it out step by step, breaking it right down into an action plan, and then literally taking that plan, holding it, and utilizing it till the next revision date, whatever that is.
And I think that's great. We have about 5 minutes left. So I just want to kind of review a few of the points that I'm kind of seeing. And I love the analogy of being able to map things out and then take stock of your of what you need. But you also need to take a step back before that and take stock of your tools, of your skill sets, because it's through that that you're going to be confident. When we talk about standing in front of an investor and having those preventative questions and being able to conquer that with that promotional side of things, only can be done if you can take stock and account for your tools that you have. That's the best way to conquer bias. It's the best way to conquer your imposter syndrome. I love that by the construct version of crazy. I think that that's amazing. Having conscious leadership, and I think that's extremely valuable to be able to be present in your leadership style. We've also got, I just want to map that out. So we've got the map, we've got the list, we've got the toolbox, and understanding the people that you need to be able to drive that. And that's also very important. I do want to give a bit of a shout out to a couple of podcasts that I listened to. So the Full Ratchet, it's all from the perspective of the investor by Nick Moran. And he's got a lot of these different perspectives that you can build into what you're doing. Medium has a couple of wonderful podcasts as well. We have about 3 minutes left. I want to just very quickly, just your last thought on the panel today. And we'll start with Lori.
If I could have anybody take anything away from this, the first and biggest thing that I would say is most of what you think is standing in your way, you put there, and it's inside of your own head. And in order to get it out of the way, get the heck out of your head. It's really difficult to move mental mountains alone because, to use your language, Ravi, you can't see that it's a construct because you're in it. Almost all of it can be moved. And if you have the notion that you're going to have impact and be successful, stand up and do it. You're the hero you have been waiting for.
Thank you. And Ravi.
I guess my greatest piece, my biggest kind of advice, suggestion to you is to really trust yourself is a big component, and then take the risk. You know, when you think about the final thoughts of someone who is passing between this world and the next, one of the greatest things that they focus on, or that can come up, is regret. Do not let regret take you away, right? Take the risk, because I can guarantee you that just simply taking the risk, you are going to learn a lot more than what is inside your comfort zone. Challenge your comfort zone, and take the risk. And be willing to understand that you don't know it all. And that's a good thing. Yeah. It's a real good thing.
and fail upwards, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to take those risks. It's so much more exciting. Now, ladies, I'd like to thank you. This was absolutely eye-opening and very inspirational and very motivational, and I appreciate you both. You are amazing, ladies. Thank you so much. I leave every panel with this one story. I lived right around the corner from my grade school, and I was running home, running after my friend Hilda, and I ran up to her and realized it wasn't her. So I just kept waving and I kept yelling around the corner, Hilda, until I was out of earshot and out of eye shot. So ladies out there, just keep running and waving. Have an amazing day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.